Hello students, how's life? Hope you're doing fine. And today we'll talk about persuasive and argumentative presentation. So last week you have learned about selling silly things like used toothpicks or snowball and what else? Yeah, some things that is actually impossible to be sold. But I think most of you are successful in selling those things. So, is it easy to sell things? I believe it is not easy, and you need uh you need some things to persuade your audience or your future customer to finally buy your things. And this is the idea of a persuasive presentation actually. So, what is a persuasive presentation? The goal of persuasive presentation is not only to make your audience get your points like in informative presentation, but you have to convince your audience to believe your point. So, instead of only sharing the information like the informative presentation, you have to make your audience believe in you, believe in your points. Make your audience support you. So you don't need this when you do the informative presentation because you just want to inform the audience. But here in persuasive presentations, you have to make sure your audience support you and be on your side. So what can we do? First of all, we have to conduct a thorough research about the subject and our audience. I believe that last week you also did this research, even though it is only a short time. Uh, I believe that the idea of selling used toothpicks used by Robert Pattinson and also the magical snowball is also a part of the research. This idea came out when you do the research, right? So by doing the research, you can get prepared with credible sources of information. And it will help you to decide the background information about the topics, the issue that you want to present for your audience. And it will help you to determine the strategy to deal with the audience. So in this case, you also need to learn about your audience, who they are, because it will determine your strategy on dealing with them. So let's take a look here. There's some types of audience. The first one is the hostile audience. This hostile audience is, well, they will act like your enemy because they will disagree with you. They will be sarcastic. Um, and if this is your presentation goal, the presentation goal to for a hostile audience is that it is unlikely that you move a hostile audience to action or even agreement in a single presentation. So in this case, your persuasive goal might just be that your audience accept that your position is reasonable and that some of your audience's objections are not as well founded as it might have thought. Thus, you will have moved the audience one step. Future presentations can take it further. So uh, when you meet the hostile audience, then well, you will likely to held to hold one or two more presentations. So, what strategy you can use? Since the audience is hostile to your position, it is likely to be suspicious of your evidence. So, it is important to use only immediately verifiable and reputable data. Give the sources of your information as you go. The presentation needs to emphasize reason argument rather than attempt to use an emotional appeal. So, when you face the hostile audience, you have to play with the data because only by data then your hostile audience may believe in you. But you still need to work harder on it. Okay. The second type of audience is the disagree audience. They simply disagree rather than being hostile. With the hostile audience, it probably cannot be moved to action or enthusiasm about your point of view. On the other hand, you can move it away from disagreement. You can aim at making this audience open to accepting some of your points and to hearing more. So, which one is harder to deal with? The hostile audience or the disagree audience? Well, there are some strategies to face this disagree audience. This audience needs you to do two things. You need to present your case clearly with well documented support. So, again, it's the data. And you also need to clearly engage the reasons against your position one by one. The best approach is a relaxed, friendly, and open consideration of the case against you. And please avoid any emotional appeal with this kind of audience. The next type of audience is the neutral because they are unfamiliar with the topic. This audience has no preconceived idea or misconceptions because the subject is very new to it. Thus, it does not hold any strong objections. So your presentation can first lead to the audience to understanding the topic, then to agreeing with your viewpoint. So this audience, they are neutral, but they can be disagree with you. They can agree with you. And your strategy needs to begin with an expository presentation and then shift to a persuasive one as you move on. You can begin with clear background, present supported reasons, declare your sources, and then use some emotional appeal. Again, you still need to work with the data. Even though you can play with the emotional appeal here. And the next type of audience is the neutral audience because they are unconcerned about the topic. They know something about the topic, but they do not really care because they just don't really concern about it. And the listener in this audience does not see a need to make any kind of decisions around what you are talking about. So when you face this kind of audience, your strategy is uh, you need to provide the background knowledge, the background information that supports your topic, your issue, your thing, and examples that you present need to demonstrate that there is a connection between the topic and the audience. So if there's a connection between the topic and your audience, then they will likely to be more interested in your topic. After you have demonstrated the listener's relationship to the subject, then interest the listener in your point of view. Highlight the reasonableness of your position and the benefits of agreeing with you. Now, it's kind of easy, but is it really easy to face this kind of audience? The agreeable audience. If you know that your audience is generally agreeable to what you have to say, you can then move it to enthusiasm about your point of view. You can firm up agreement so that it is solid and thus prepare the listener to make a commitment later on. So it is one step ahead from the previous audience. You have to begin with the familiar and move to the unfamiliar. You need to reinforce the reasons why the audience is already in general agreement. Here, to face this audience, you can use an emotional appeal in addition to your supported points. Then discuss objections to your point of view that the audience may have heard and show it how to answer those objections and why they are not valid. Nah, this one is, I think this one will be the easiest audience. The enthusiastic audience. This audience is already on side with your ideas, so you don't need to persuade them hardly to agree with you, and they are ready to be moved to action. And your goal for this audience can be to get them to do something that may to publicly commit themselves, sign their names, or take some other step to further the subject of your presentation. Since the audience is already on site, it does not need to be convinced. You don't need to provide as much documented information as with a neutral or negative audience. You can use an emotional appeal to lead or push your audience into taking a step forward. The presentation can end with an appeal to act and a clear description of the alternatives so that the audience knows exactly what it can do. So these are the types of audience that we may face during our presentation. And if we did research, if we do some research about the audience, then we can have the good strategy, the suitable strategy to convince or to persuade our audience to believe in our idea. And the most important thing to do in a persuasive presentation is that your audience know why should they listen to us as the speaker, because when they do not know it, then they will likely to be the negative audience or the neutral audience, because they do not know what is the purpose of our presentation. And also, we need to make sure that we can propose that our topic is important for them or can be useful for them. And it's also important about how to deal with objections from the audience, especially the negative things. Then in a presentation, we need to be creative and we need to think